Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chairwoman Waters. Lovely to see you again. Ranking Member McHenry, and of course, our other distinguished committee members. I thank you very much for the opportunity and the time. As you know, the pandemic has unleashed economic devastation in states all across the country. The wave of financial pain threatens to swamp states like New Mexico, despite our healthy fiscal posture prior to the arrival of COVID-19. We labored for years here to diversify our economy, strengthen our overall financial position, and improve our long-term budget outlook. But much of that progress was undone in only a few short and brutal months, and we face a long, difficult road back. Indeed, New Mexico and other energy-producing states have experienced not only pandemic-related budget shortfalls, but a collapse in the global oil market. These dual economic crises have created a revenue gap that threatens to swallow essential services so many depend upon. Everything from education to small business support, child welfare to healthcare services, and more. The fiscal impact of the pandemic is threefold. We have already spent more than $400 million on direct COVID-19 costs, including the purchase of PPE and testing supplies, and those costs continue to mount. We face indirect costs as state agencies and businesses adapt to a COVID-positive world. These costs for K-12 public schools alone total more than $520 million. And we face the exponential loss of revenue due to the economic downturn, which compounds the other two. These three expenses are tied together, and we cannot emphasize one over another. And let me be clear, these are not static data points. The pandemic is ongoing, the storm is raging, and those winds of fiscal damage are not dying down. In all, New Mexico faces a nearly 20% decline in general fund revenues year over year. A $4 billion shortfall is a line item in Washington, but in New Mexico, it's the difference between healthy, well-fed families and the alternative for our current fiscal year and the next. Even with a record level of state revenue prudently set aside in reserves, the fiscal crisis threatens to touch New Mexicans in every corner of our state who rely on state programs and local level programs powered by federal funds, so many of whom have already struggled to find and maintain work, to provide for their children, and to stay safe from the virus. States like mine that have taken tough and proactive measures to blunt the spread of COVID-19 must be able to use federal assistance to replace and backfill lost revenues, or else make drastic, difficult cuts to essential services. Our effective, life-saving response to the pandemic cannot be left as a millstone around the necks of New Mexico workers, families, local governments, and small business owners who have already given and lost so much. Small business revenue in our state is down 21% this year. Many have furloughed or laid off workers, and of course, some have closed their doors for good. Our small businesses skew smaller than the national average, meaning they cannot take on more debt, meaning grants are much more effective than loans. My administration, in partnership with our state legislature, has delivered more than $400 million for small business support programs, sustaining hundreds of jobs, and still there are businesses and workers needing more. We were one of the first 7 states in the U.S. to operationalize every emergency unemployment funding stream made available, and we have delivered more than $2 billion in assistance. But this has depleted our trust fund, and we will need help in sustaining these lifelines. We all know, and I know, that tightening our belts in the coming months and years is critical. And indeed, in some states, including New Mexico, we already have. But these cost-cutting measures will not be enough to weather the storm. An umbrella is not enough protection in a hurricane, and the rubber will meet the road in homes all across states like mine, where families, children, and workers may be left without. States and local governments need more funding and more flexibility. Already this year, New Mexico has demonstrated how expeditiously we will use and provide funding to those who need it most, but we need to expand the toolbox and fill it and refill it. the health and economic crisis battering New Mexico and the United States require an all-hands-on-deck, whole-of-government approach. Thank you.